A new super heavyweight contender has emerged who could pose a serious threat to the reign of Jesus Olivares, and it is a relative novice who only started powerlifting just over a year ago and only competed for the first time just a few days ago and proceeded to put up the third biggest raw tested total of all time, behind only Jesus and Ray Williams. This man is Devonte Lewis. I'm going through his best lifts and showing you how close he is to becoming the strongest ever. So in the meet that he did recently, he squatted 1,000 pounds. How's that for a powerlifting debut? 455 kilos. Now this was a PLU meet, which is typically an untested fed. However, it was in their tested division. But it was under untested conditions, meaning deadlift bar and all the rest. 288 kilo bench press, which is very close to the world record, which he actually attempted after this. I'll show you that as well. And a 365 kilo deadlift. Now, like I said, being this is an untested federation, despite him competing in the tested side of it, I guess, deadlift bar is a notable difference to the stiff bar using the IPF. Another difference is, you know, we're not going to lie, there was a bit of a hitch there, and that lift was given white lights. I think it was 2-to-1 white lights, fair enough. But yeah, in the IPF, that ain't passing. And Jesus himself will tell you that, based on all the red lights he's gotten for deadlifts that were much smoother lockouts than that one. Now, that did give him, though, an 1108 kilo total, over 1,100 kilos, over 2,400 pounds. And again, this is his first meet, and apparently he's only been powerlifting for just over a year. In fact, his very first post, which was in May of 2024, he said, and I quote, "I start my deadlifting journey next week." I mean, when I talk about in my other videos and I mention untested and try and defend the natty status of all these IPF lifters, and I talk about the concept of genetic outliers, this is what I'm talking about. This guy epitomizes that. Now, obviously that deadlift was, you know, not the best. However, his second attempt of 347.5 moved a lot more convincingly with no hitch. He almost had a bit of a speed wobble there from the bar whip because of how fast it moved. But if you put that towards his total instead of his 365, and you're being super harsh on him like an IPF jury would be, that still gives him a 1090.5 kilo total, still over 2,400 pounds, right? So whichever way you look at it, whether you give him that third deadlift or you don't, this man is still an absolute freak and getting dangerously close to Jesus. And I'll explain in more detail towards the end when I look at their potential future clash at PA Nats next year. But okay, let's look at the biggest raw tested totals ever. Devonte Lewis, as I mentioned, is number 3 on this list now. Obviously, Jesus owns the IPF and overall world record with what he did at Sheffield in 2023. But Devonte became only the third man to total over 1,100 kilos and over 2,400 pounds. And like I said, even if you only give him his second deadlift, he would still be ranked 3rd on this list regardless. So either way, he's the 3rd strongest ever. Slight caveat, again, this occurred in an untested federation. So, well, I mean, the weigh-in differences, so the fact that it's a 24-hour weigh-in instead of 2-hour weigh-in means no difference, or makes no difference to him, because he weighed in at 210.2. So my man is not cutting weight. But the main difference being the deadlift bar. So, you know, how many extra kilos does he get out of that? Who knows? Honestly, with how strong he is, I don't think it will even make a difference. He'll probably pull even more on a stiff bar. Who knows? But yeah, 3rd strongest ever, ahead of Teamer and Jezza Wepa, who respectively have been the 2nd strongest super heavyweights in their generations, behind, of course, Jesus and Ray, who have dominated the history of raw tested powerlifting. If you look at the squats, he ranks number 4. He's only the 4th man ever to squat over 1,000 pounds in raw tested competition. And based on that video that I showed you, it moved pretty damn quickly still. I don't think 455 is his top end. Jesus owns the IPF world record with 478. Ray holds the overall world record for the biggest raw tested squat ever done, which wasn't done in an international competition, hence it's not the IPF world record. But either way, I don't think Devonte hitting the IPF world record or even taking Ray's record is out of the question, because that 455 moved quick. And like I said, he's only been powerlifting for just over a year. He's still almost in the newbie gains phase of, training like a proper powerlifter and maximizing his strength, which obviously the raw strength is there for days. He's only 27 years old. I wouldn't be surprised. It could be the first guy to score 500 kilos raw and tested. Who knows? Bench presses. 288 kilos, his bench press is only 3.5 kilos below the biggest raw tested bench press ever done. Now, this is a ranking done in full power meets, which means in squat, bench, and deadlift meets, not taking into account bench only. There have been some other lifters who have done more than this, like TD Davies did 300, I think, at an IPF bench only. But Ilias Bukalim, 291.5, he has held the IPF world record full power bench since 2015, and he's gradually been upping it until he hit 291.5 in, 2021 or whatever it was. So Devonte Lewis is only 3.5 kilos away, and in fact, he attempted it at that very meet. His third attempt bench press was 292 kilos to take that record off of Ilias Bukalim, and unfortunately, he didn't quite get it on the day. That was the only lift that he missed on the day. He completed all his other lifts successfully, so he went 8 for 9. And I mean, it was a pretty close miss. He got it off the chest. Obviously, couldn't get it fully locked out. In the gym, though, he has benched 291 with the caveat that it was a touch and go rep. So obviously, no competition pause to be seen there. But a smooth touch and go rep with 291 and a close miss with a pause competition bench with 292. It seems like it's only a matter of time, and not too long a time, until he breaks that long-standing bench press world record by Ilias Bukalim. So if we combine those two lifts, the squat and the bench, Devonte Lewis has the biggest raw tested subtotal in history by a full half kilo over Jesus. So Jesus' biggest subtotal came at Sheffield when he squatted 470 and benched 272.5. Obviously, he's squatted 478, but then he only benched 255 at that meet. So the biggest subtotal ever done in one individual meet is Devonte Lewis by half a kilo over Jesus, over other super strong subtotal lifters like Jezel Aper, Ray Williams, Frank Allen. So yeah, absolute freak. And honestly, he's still an 800 plus pound deadlifter. Again, that was, deadlift bar, and, the standards were different to the IPF. But if he can clean that up, then who knows what he's going to be able to put up on the platform when he goes over onto the IPF side, because, yeah, that's where we want to see him. The reason being, PA Nats 2026. Now, Jesus Olivares did not qualify for Sheffield this year, right? He had a disappointing by his standards Worlds performance, even though he still won by 70-something kilos. He didn't hit 95% of his world record, meaning he didn't qualify to Sheffield. What that means, though, is he has to go to PA Nats to qualify for Worlds. That'll be the first time he's had to do that since, I believe, 2022. Ever since then, he's been just using his Sheffield as a qualifier to Worlds, which, fair enough, why wouldn't you, right? But it's meant that we haven't seen him in head-to-head competition against a top other American super heavyweight, who, obviously Ray Williams, they never crossed path. Jesus never crossed path with Ray Williams. He's never had a direct head-to-head. I mean, Teamer was close, right? Teamer was close last year. It's a shame we didn't have that version of Teamer against Jesus at this year's Worlds, because that would have been real close. But obviously Teamer cut weight. Now he's back below 1,000 kilos. So it's never going to be super close with Jesus unless he gains back some that weight. But we thought that we were finally going to see Jesus versus Ray. But then obviously Ray got suspended for like 16 months. So he's not going to be a PNATS. So like, I guess Jesus has another easy run. No longer. He's not going to have an easy run if Devonte crosses over into Powerlifting America by next year. And imagine how strong he'll be by next year when, he's only been doing this for just over a year. Imagine when he could do it in another, however many months that is until April next year when PNATS is. Imagine how much stronger he's going to get. It's going to be a fight for Jesus. And especially when you look at his last 5 performances. So obviously we know at 2023 Sheffield, he did that 1152.5. Since then, he's competed 5 times. He's won every single meet. Well, I mean, Worlds he hasn't won Sheffield, but he's never been out-totaled. But these were his performances and his numbers that he put up at those 5 subsequent meets. You can see his total is now hovering in around about the 1100, it seems. He had those 3 successive meets at pretty much the exact same total. And then, Worlds was a very subpar day for him, and where he hit that 1070. So based on where he's been, and based on what Devonte Lewis just did over 1100 kilos, and you would think the rapid rate of progression we're going to see from him between now and PNATs, we're going to need to see a potentially, not even potentially, a likely strongest version of Jesus to win PNATs and even qualify for Worlds. Imagine that. Imagine Jesus, after being so dominant in his class, not even making it to Worlds. That would be unheard of. But yes, Jesus Olivares versus Devonte Lewis is the matchup that we're all looking forward to now. The super heavyweights have some much needed life in the weight class now. It's no longer just Jesus at the top with no one close to him. Obviously the disappointment with Ray not making PNATs next year to face off against Jesus. This now makes it slightly less disappointing that we're going to see Devonte Lewis. I just hope he makes it there, finds his way across, and we see this showdown, because he is looking crazy strong, and I can't wait to see him compete again in the future. Let me know what you think. Who would be the favorite in this matchup, and do you think Devonte Lewis could pull off the upset?